I sat at the far end of the table, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, as my mother's voice carried across the restaurant. "Poor Rose," she announced to my brother's future in-laws, her laugh sharp as broken glass. "Still working that little bookstore job at 28. We had such high hopes, but some children just don't have what it takes." The entire table went silent. Then my brother's fiancée, a literary agent named Kara, turned slowly toward me. Her eyes went wide. "Wait," she whispered, leaning forward. "You're R.M. Sterling." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. I felt 15 pairs of eyes swing toward me, but all I could focus on was Kara's face, watching recognition bloom across her features like time-lapse photography of a flower opening. My mother's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to confusion in the span of a heartbeat. "I'm sorry, what?" "Patricia, my mother," said with a forced laugh. "R.M. who?" Kara wasn't listening to her. She was staring at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You're R.M. Sterling," she repeated, louder this time. Not a question anymore, a statement. "Oh my God, you're R.M. Sterling." My brother Derek set down his wine glass carefully, looking between his fiancée and me like we'd both started speaking in tongues. "Kara, what are you talking about?" "R.M. Sterling," Kara said, her voice rising with excitement. "The author, the R.M. Sterling. I've been trying to track down her contact information for 2 years. My agency has reached out to her publisher at least a dozen times trying to arrange a meeting." She turned back to me, her professional composure cracking. "Your third book just won the National Book Critics Circle Award last week. Your sales numbers are insane. You've sold over 2 million copies across 3 novels in 4 years. The table erupted. Derek's future father-in-law, a distinguished man with silver hair named Harold Brennan, leaned forward with sudden interest. Derek's jaw had gone slack. My mother looked like someone had slapped her with a frozen fish. "That's impossible," Patricia said, but her voice wavered. "Rose works at a bookstore. She barely makes rent." "I work at Chapter and Verse," I said quietly, finding my voice for the first time since the bomb had dropped. "Because I own it. I bought it 2 years ago." Kara fumbled for her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Within seconds she'd pulled up my author photo, the one my publisher used for press materials. It was carefully shot to obscure my features, artistic shadows, and angles that suggested, rather than revealed. "But if you knew what you were looking for, if you were looking right at me." The resemblance was unmistakable. She held the phone up, comparing the image to my face. "It's you. The eyes, the shape of your face. I knew you looked familiar at the engagement party last month, but I couldn't place it. You kept your head down most of the night," she scrolled frantically. "Your publisher describes you as intensely private, someone who lets the work speak for itself. They've never released your full name or a clear photo. Every interview you've done has been via email or with your face obscured." "Rose?" Derek's voice was small, confused. "Is this true?" I took a breath, feeling the weight of 5 years of secrecy pressing down on my chest. "Yes. I've been writing under the pen name R.M. Sterling since I was 23. My first novel was published 4 years ago. The second came out 2 years later. The third last year." "What kind of books?" Harold Brennan asked, his attorney's mind already working. "Literary thrillers," Kara answered before I could. "Psychological suspense about dysfunctional families, secrets, betrayals. They're brilliant, dark and atmospheric, and deeply emotional. Critics love them, readers love them. She's one of the biggest authors in the genre right now." "And you never told us?" Patricia's voice had gone cold, but I could see the gears turning behind her eyes. "Your own family?" "I needed space to create," I said simply. "I needed to write without commentary, without expectations, without anyone looking over my shoulder or trying to insert themselves into the process." "How much?" Derek asked bluntly. "How much money are we talking about?" "Derek," Kara said sharply, embarrassed. But I saw it then, the shift in my mother's expression. The shock was fading, replaced by something calculating. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor, and suddenly there were tears in her eyes. Actual tears, summoned from nowhere. "I'm so proud," she said, her voice breaking perfectly. She pressed her hand to her chest. My daughter. My brilliant daughter. I always knew you had it in you, Rose. Always. She looked around the table at the assembled guests, at Derek's future in-laws, at the cousins and aunts and uncles who'd been listening to her belittle me for the past hour. I inspired so much of her work. We'd stay up late talking about stories, about characters. I helped her edit her early drafts. I gave her ideas. I felt the air leave my lungs. Mom, that's not. She was always so dedicated, Patricia continued, talking over me, her voice growing stronger and more confident. Even as a little girl, writing in her journals. I saved everything, you know. All her early stories. I knew someday the world would see what I saw. She dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. I sacrificed so much to support her dreams. Working extra hours so she could take writing classes, driving her to the library every weekend. Patricia, I said. Louder now. That's not what happened. But she wasn't listening. She'd found her audience, and she was performing. It hasn't been easy, keeping her secret all these years. Not being able to share her success with friends, with family. But Rose wanted privacy, and I respected that. I've always respected her wishes, even when it hurt. Derek caught on quickly. I always believed in you, sis, he said, standing up to join the narrative. Remember how I used to tell you to keep writing, even when you got rejection letters? I never got rejection letters. My first manuscript sold in a 3-day auction to the first publisher who saw it. This is incredible, Harold Brennan said, looking at me with new interest. You must be doing very well. What was your advance on the last book? 7 figures, Kara said, still scrolling through her phone, reading industry news. According to Publishers Marketplace, Hartman House signed her for Book 4 last year. Deal was reported as significant, which usually means at least $1 million. The table went silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. I watched my mother's eyes gleam. I watched Derek do mental math, probably calculating how much of my money he thought he was entitled to. I watched the future in-laws look at me with new appreciation, no longer the disappointment Patricia had painted me as, but someone with value, with worth, with money. And I understood with sickening clarity that everything was about to get much, much worse. The phone calls started 3 days later. The first was from my mother, her voice honey-sweet and cloying. Rose, darling, we need to talk about your career. You need proper family support now that your secret is out. I've been thinking about how I can help you publicly. Maybe we should do some interviews together. Talk about our creative partnership. We don't have a creative partnership, Mom. Well, we need to present a united front, she said, and I heard the edge creep into her voice. I've already told Aunt Linda and the neighbors about how I've been helping you. It would look very strange if you contradicted that story now. I hung up. She called back 4 times. I didn't answer. Then Derek started. Hey Rose, listen, about the wedding. Kara's parents are paying for most of it, but we want to do this right, you know. We're looking at venues that cost about $75,000. I was thinking, since you're doing so well, maybe you could chip in, you know, as a wedding gift? And actually, we're looking at houses in Westchester. Down payments are rough. I could really use about $200,000. Derek, I'm not giving you money. Come on, Rose. I'm your brother. Family helps family. Or do you think you're too good for us now? This has nothing to do with being too good. I worked for this. I earned it. With Mom's help, he said pointedly. She's been telling everyone how much she contributed. It would be a shame if that story got complicated. The threat was clear. I hung up on him too. By the end of the week, they'd escalated. Both of them showed up at Chapter and Verse, my bookstore, without warning. I was helping a customer select a gift when the door chimed, and they walked in like they owned the place. There she is, Patricia announced loudly, her voice carrying through the small space. My daughter, the famous author. Every head in the store turned. I saw phones come out, cameras swivel toward me. My stomach dropped. Mom, please, not here. Oh, don't be modest, she said, moving through the store, touching books, running her fingers along spines. Everyone should know, my daughter is R.M. Sterling. Those incredible thrillers everyone's reading? She wrote them. With my help, of course. Customers started whispering. I saw someone typing furiously on their phone. Within minutes, I knew this would be on social media. My carefully protected privacy, the anonymity I'd fought so hard to maintain, was dissolving like sugar in hot water. "We need to discuss your obligations," Derek said quietly, cornering me by the register while Patricia held court with the customers. "Family obligations. I don't owe you anything. Mom's getting older. She's going to need care eventually. Expensive care. And I'm getting married, starting a life. You can't just hoard all that money while your family struggles." "You're not struggling. You have a good job. Kara has a good job." "Not like yours," he said, and there was something ugly in his voice. "You got lucky. You should be grateful Mom supported you enough that you could take the risk of being a writer. Without her, you'd be nothing." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that Patricia had mocked my writing dreams for years, had told me I was wasting my time, that I should get a real job. I wanted to tell him that I'd paid for my own writing classes, my own books, my own education, while working 2 jobs through college. But the customers were watching, phones were recording, and anything I said would be twisted. That night, the photos hit Instagram and Twitter. My face, my name, my bookstore's location. Within hours, R.M. Sterling was trending. My publisher called in a panic. "Rose, what happened?" "We had a carefully planned reveal set for next month's book signing. This was supposed to be controlled." Grace, my editor, sounded exhausted. "The publicity team is scrambling. Everyone wants to know why you kept your identity secret. Reporters are calling. We're getting requests for interviews." "My family happened," I said bitterly. "They're trying to take credit for my work and demanding money." "Handle it carefully," she warned. "Public family drama can tank a career." But it was too late for careful. The next morning, my mother gave an interview to a local news station. I watched the clip online, my hands shaking. "I'm so proud of my daughter," Patricia said, sitting in her living room, tissues at the ready. "We worked so closely on those books. Late nights discussing characters, helping her work through plot problems. I even gave her some ideas for story twists. It's been hard, keeping the secret, but she wanted privacy and I respected that." The interviewer, a sympathetic woman in her 40s, nodded. "And now that the truth is out, I just hope Rose remembers where she came from," Patricia said, her voice trembling. "Family is everything. Success can change people, but I pray it won't change her." Derek appeared beside her. "Rose has always been complicated, driven. Sometimes that drive made her forget about the people who helped her get there. But we love her anyway. We'll always support her, even if she doesn't support us back." The implication was clear. They were painting themselves as the devoted family and me as the ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned them after finding success. And people were believing it. The comments section was brutal. "Sounds like she forgot her roots. Family comes first. She should help them. My mom helped me with everything. I can't imagine cutting her off like this." I tried to post my own statement on social media, clarifying that my family hadn't been involved in my writing process, but it got lost in the noise. For every supportive comment, there were 5 accusing me of being selfish, cold, ungrateful. Then came the final straw. 2 weeks after the engagement dinner, I was at my apartment when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find my mother, Derek, and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. "Rose," Patricia said sweetly. "This is Harold Brennan, Kara's father. He's an attorney. We need to talk about your books." The lawsuit papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked apologetic as he handed me the envelope. My hands shook as I read the first page. Patricia Thornton and Derek Thornton versus Rose Thornton. Copyright infringement, misappropriation of life stories, emotional distress. They were suing me for 50% of all past and future royalties from my novels. I called the only lawyer I knew, a guy named Jack Porter, who'd helped me set up my business LLC when I bought the bookstore. He specialized in small business contracts, not intellectual property litigation, but he'd come recommended and charged reasonable rates. "This is bad," Jack said after reading through the complaint. "They're claiming that you based your novels on family stories they told you, that the characters are recognizable as them, and that you've profited from their life experiences without consent or compensation. That's insane. My books are fiction. Yes, they're about dysfunctional families, but they're not based on my family specifically. I've never used real events. It doesn't matter if it's true, Jack said grimly. It matters if they can make it look true. And they've got Harold Brennan representing them pro bono. This guy is a shark, high-powered attorney, well-connected, specializes in intellectual property. He's doing this as a favor to his future son-in-law. Why would Kara let her father do this? Maybe she doesn't know. Or maybe she's in on it. Jack flipped through more pages. They've filed this in a way that guarantees media coverage. Look at the timing. They released it to entertainment news outlets before you were even served. This is already online. He was right. By noon, every entertainment website had picked up the story. Best-selling author sued by family who claim she stole their stories. The headlines were everywhere, each one worse than the last. My publisher called again. Rose, we need to put the brakes on everything. Legal is advising us not to release book 4 until this is resolved. You're canceling my book? Not canceling. Postponing. We can't risk releasing it while there's active litigation claiming you don't have full rights to your own work. Grace, you know that's ridiculous. I know, my editor said, and she sounded genuinely sad. But this is bigger than what I know. The legal department is scared. If your family wins even part of this claim, it could affect all your contracts, all your past sales. We have to protect ourselves. The book tour scheduled for next month was canceled. Signing events at 12 different bookstores across the country, gone. My advance for book 4 was frozen pending resolution of the lawsuit. My income stream stopped overnight. Jack warned me that legal fees would be substantial. This kind of case can easily run into 6 figures. Discovery alone will cost thousands. They're demanding access to all your drafts, notes, journals, correspondence. They want to depose you, your editor, your agent. I don't have an agent anymore, I admitted. She dropped me yesterday. Said she couldn't represent me while I was in active litigation. Of course she did, Jack muttered. Nobody wants to touch this mess. The discovery process began, and it was invasive and humiliating. Harold Brennan's team demanded copies of every draft I'd ever written, every note, every scrap of paper related to my books. They wanted my journals from high school, my college papers, anything that might show I'd drawn from family experiences. Meanwhile, Patricia and Derek gave more interviews. They appeared on a local morning show, sitting side by side, looking wounded and betrayed. We just want what's fair, Derek said earnestly. Rose used our stories, our pain, our experiences. She profited from our lives without even asking permission. Can you give us an example? The host asked. In her second book, there's a character who's an overbearing mother figure, Patricia said, dabbing her eyes. That's clearly me. She took private family moments, conversations we had, arguments we'd had, and she put them in her book for everyone to read. It was humiliating. We supported her dreams, Derek added. And this is how she repays us. I tried to respond, tried to explain that my books were fiction, that I'd created characters and situations from my imagination, but no major outlet would book me for an interview. I was the controversial party, the one being sued, the risky story. Grace advised me to stay quiet anyway. Anything you say can be used against you in court. Let your lawyer handle it. But Jack was fighting an uphill battle. Harold Brennan was filing motions faster than we could respond to them. He was burying us in paperwork, running up legal fees, making this as expensive and painful as possible. My bookstore started losing business. Regular customers stopped coming, put off by the reporters who sometimes lingered outside. Someone spray-painted the word liar across my storefront window in angry red letters one night. The photo went viral. My landlord called. Rose, I'm sorry, but the other tenants are complaining. There are reporters in the lobby, people taking photos. It's disruptive. Maybe you should consider breaking your lease. I was being pushed out of my own home. The few friends I had started distancing themselves. Nobody wanted to be associated with scandal. Taylor, who owned the coffee shop next to my bookstore, was one of the only people who still treated me normally. This is garbage, she said, bringing me coffee one morning when I looked particularly exhausted. Everyone who knows you knows this is garbage. Not enough people know me, I said quietly. My health was deteriorating. I wasn't sleeping, barely eating, losing weight I couldn't afford to lose. Every morning brought new headlines, new accusations, new ways my family was destroying me in the court of public opinion. Then Harold filed a motion demanding I turn over my financial records. All of them. Every bank statement, every deposit, every transaction for the past 5 years. Jack fought it, but the judge granted it. That's when they found what they were looking for. Or rather, what they created. 2 weeks later, Jack called me in a panic. "Rose, we have a problem. Harold has filed an emergency motion claiming you're hiding assets and attempting to move money offshore to avoid paying damages." "That's insane. I haven't moved any money anywhere." He has bank statements that show wire transfers to offshore accounts. Large transfers. Over the past 6 months, "I never made those transfers." "I believe you," Jack said. "But the documents look real. Real enough that the judge granted an emergency order freezing all your accounts pending investigation. You can't access your money, Rose. And they've triggered an IRS audit." I sat down hard, the room spinning. They fabricated evidence. Probably. But proving that will take time and more money. Money you can't access. Jack was silent for a moment. "There's more. Harold has filed a bar complaint against me, claiming ethical violations. He's trying to get me disqualified from your case." "Can he do that?" "He can try. And even if he fails, it's another distraction, another expense, another delay." Jack sighed. "Rose, I have to be honest with you. This is looking really bad. Harold is connected. He knows the judges. He's playing this perfectly. Every move we make, he's 2 steps ahead." I hung up and stared at my frozen bank account balance on my laptop screen. $237,000 that I couldn't touch. Money I'd earned, saved carefully, and now couldn't access. I had $300 in my wallet and no way to get more. My mother was destroying me, and she was doing it methodically, legally, and very publicly, and I had no idea how to fight back. 3 months into the legal nightmare, I barely recognized my own life. The fabricated bank statements had done exactly what Harold Brennan intended. Even though I'd never made those offshore transfers, even though the documents had to be fake, proving it was expensive and time-consuming, the IRS investigation meant every account I had was frozen. I was living off what little cash I'd had on hand, and the goodwill of friends like Taylor, who let me pick up shifts at her coffee shop for money under the table. Jack Porter had managed to fight off the bar complaint, but just barely. The case was stalled in endless legal procedures, delayed by motion after motion from Harold's team. My mother and Derek were patient. They had time. They weren't the ones bleeding savings on attorney fees. Meanwhile, they were thriving. I found out from a former friend's Instagram story that Patricia was writing a book, a memoir. The working title was Raising Brilliance, a mother's journey through her daughter's success. She'd landed a deal with a major publisher, capitalizing on the publicity from the lawsuit. The advance was rumored to be 6 figures. Derek had started a podcast called Family First, where he talked about the importance of giving credit where it's due and shared stories about growing up with me. The episodes were full of embellished anecdotes and outright lies, but they were getting decent downloads. He was monetizing my destruction. The worst part was that people believed them. The narrative they'd crafted, the devoted family betrayed by an ungrateful daughter, had taken root. Comment sections were poison. "She owes them everything. Family made her who she is." Typical rich person, forgetting where they came from. I'd closed chapter and verse 2 months earlier. The bookstore I'd built from nothing, my refuge, my pride, gone. The frozen assets meant I couldn't pay rent, couldn't pay staff, couldn't keep the lights on. Watching them put up the closed permanently sign had felt like watching a piece of myself die. I was living in Taylor's spare room, sleeping on an air mattress surrounded by boxes of my belongings. My apartment was gone too, given up when the landlord made it clear I wasn't welcome anymore. The depression was crushing. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. The anxiety attacks came randomly, sudden, and overwhelming, leaving me gasping and shaking. Taylor found me on the bathroom floor one night, having a panic attack so severe I thought I was dying. "We need to get you help," she'd said, helping me to my feet. "I can't afford help. I can't afford anything." My publisher had officially canceled my 4th book contract. The email from Grace was brief and apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Rose, this is out of my hands. The legal department won't budge. We can't publish a book when there's active litigation about your rights to your own work. 5 years of building a career, gone in 3 months." But my family wasn't done. I learned that Patricia had been in contact with several of my former college friends, asking for stories about me, old photos, anything she could use for her memoir. She was crafting a narrative, building a case in the court of public opinion, while Harold built one in actual court. Derek's wedding to Kara was scheduled for the following month. It was going to be lavish, expensive, everything they'd dreamed of. They'd taken out loans in anticipation of their settlement money, spending cash they didn't have yet but expected to win from me. I wasn't invited. Of course I wasn't. But the lack of invitation made more headlines. Author too toxic for brother's wedding. The article included quotes from Patricia about how heartbroken she was that her children were estranged, how she'd tried everything to bridge the gap, how I'd refused all attempts at reconciliation. Lies. All lies, but effective ones. Jack called with an update that made everything worse. "There's been a preliminary hearing. Rose, you need to prepare yourself. The judge ruled that there's sufficient evidence for the case to proceed to trial." What does that mean? It means the judge thinks your family's case has merit. He's not dismissing it. We're going to trial. Jack's voice was heavy. The trial date is set for 4 months from now. And Rose, in his ruling, the judge said the manuscript pages with your mother's notes on them appear authentic. The burden of proof is on us now. We have to prove those documents are fabricated. How? How do I prove something isn't real? Forensic document analysis, handwriting experts, digital forensics, all of which costs money you don't have. I hung up and sat in Taylor's spare room, surrounded by the wreckage of my life, and seriously considered just giving up, just signing whatever settlement they wanted, admitting to lies, letting them win. At least then it would be over. Then my phone rang. "Derek." "Rose," he said when I answered. I shouldn't have picked up, but I was too tired to care anymore. "What do you want?" "I'm at the hospital. Mom's here." My heart stuttered. "What happened?" "She collapsed this morning. The stress of all this, of fighting with her own daughter, it's been too much for her." His voice was carefully controlled, but I could hear the calculation underneath. "The doctors are running tests. She's very weak." "Derek, if you don't settle this, if you keep dragging this out, if something happens to Mom because of the stress you're causing, everyone will know it's your fault." He paused. "The media is already outside the hospital, Rose. This is your last chance to do the right thing." He hung up. I looked at my phone, at the dozens of news alerts already appearing. Author's mother hospitalized amid family battle. Best-selling writer's legal fight lands mother in hospital. Family feud takes toll on mother's health. It was a setup. It had to be. Patricia was fine, or this was staged, or both. But it didn't matter what was true. What mattered was the story. And the story was that I'd put my mother in the hospital by refusing to admit I owed her money and credit for my success. By tomorrow, I'd look like a monster. I sat on the edge of the air mattress, head in my hands, and realized I'd reached the breaking point. There was nowhere left to fall. They'd taken everything except my surrender. And now they were demanding that too. Maybe it was time to give it to them. I visited my mother in the hospital the next morning. I'd spent all night thinking, weighing options I didn't have, trying to find a path forward that didn't exist. By dawn, I was hollow, empty of fight, ready to end this on whatever terms would make it stop. Taylor drove me. She didn't say much, just gripped my hand before I got out of the car. "You don't have to do this. I don't have a choice anymore." Patricia was in a private room on the 4th floor. I found her sitting up in bed, perfectly made up, hair styled, looking healthier than she had in years. When she saw me, she smiled. It was a predator's smile, satisfied and cold. "Rose, how kind of you to visit." Derek was there, of course, and Harold Brennan, expensive suit perfectly pressed, leather briefcase on the chair beside him. They'd been waiting for me. "Ready to be reasonable?" Patricia asked, as casually as if she was asking about the weather. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Harold opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "The settlement agreement. We've revised the terms given the extended nature of the litigation and additional damages. Additional damages? I managed. Your mother's hospitalization, Harold said smoothly. Stress-induced health crisis. That's a consequence of your refusal to settle reasonably. It raises the stakes. He slid the papers across the rolling table toward me. I picked them up with shaking hands and started reading. 60% of all past and future earnings from my books, not 50% like before. 60. Full co-author credit on all future publications. My mother's name would appear alongside mine on every book cover. A public statement admitting that I couldn't have succeeded without my family's support and contributions. Dedication of my next book to Patricia and Derek Thornton. Payment of all legal fees for both sides. And one more thing, a new addition. I would be required to consult with Patricia on all future manuscripts before publication, giving her approval rights over content. They wanted control of my career forever. This is insane, I whispered. This is fair, Derek said. More than fair, considering what you've put us through. Harold pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo, and held it up for me to see. It was an email, supposedly from my email address, dated 3 years ago. The message read, Mom, you were right about the character motivation in Chapter 12. I'm going to use your suggestion about the backstory. You always know exactly what the story needs. Couldn't do this without you. I'd never written that email. I'd never sent anything like it. Where did you get that? Discovery, Harold said blandly. From your email server. There are several more like it. Very helpful for establishing your mother's contributions to your work. They were fabricated. They had to be. But they looked real. They had my email address. The dates were plausible. The formatting perfect. Someone had either hacked my account in the past or was a very skilled forger. We also have testimony prepared from your brother about the many conversations he had with you during the writing process, offering ideas and feedback. That never happened. Your word against ours, Derek said. And we have documentation. Harold produced another file. And if you don't sign today, if you insist on going to trial, we have additional evidence we're prepared to release. Evidence that will make the charges of hidden assets look even worse. Evidence that will destroy what's left of your reputation completely. It was a threat. A clear, direct threat. Sign or we'll annihilate you. Patricia watched me with those cold eyes, waiting. She knew she'd won. They all knew. I picked up the pen Harold offered. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold it. The first page was already marked with colored tabs where I needed to sign and initial. 60 places in total. 60 times I'd have to agree to my own defeat. I put the pen to paper. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it. What did it matter now? But something made me pause, made me pull it out, and look at the screen. A text from Taylor, all caps. Don't sign anything. Check your email. Now. One moment, I said, standing up. I need to use the restroom. Rose, Harold said warningly. I'm not leaving. I just need a minute. I walked to the bathroom down the hall, locked the door, and opened my email with shaking hands. Taylor had sent me a video file. The subject line read, "You need to see this." I downloaded it, opened it. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Security camera footage. Black and white. Timestamp in the corner. Then I recognized it. Chapter and verse. My bookstore. The view was from the camera I'd installed above the register, looking toward the back office. The timestamp was from 6 months ago, 11:43 at night, long after closing. The door to the office opened. Derek walked in. I watched, my heart pounding, as my brother moved through the frame. He went to my desk, opened drawers, rifled through papers. He found my manuscript folder, the one where I kept hard copies of drafts. He pulled out several pages, laid them on the desk, and took photos with his phone. Then he took 5 or 6 pages with him when he left. The video jumped to 2 weeks later. Same late-night timestamp. This time it was Patricia. She was in my office, sitting at my desk. She had papers in front of her, and something on her phone she kept looking at. She was practicing handwriting, copying something, comparing it, practicing again. After several minutes, she took the papers she'd been writing on and left. They'd fabricated the evidence themselves. They'd broken into my bookstore, stolen my manuscript pages, practiced forging notes and margins, and created the documents they were using to sue me. The next video file showed something else. Audio this time, Not from my bookstore's security system. Taylor's email said, "Someone who used to work for you sent this." She felt guilty. I pressed play. Kara's voice. Unmistakable. "I don't know, Harold. This feels wrong. She seems like a good person." Harold Brennan's voice responded, "She's a cash cow. Your future husband's family is drowning in debt. This lawsuit will set them up for life. Set you up for life. But we're lying. She didn't steal their stories. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what we can prove. Or rather, what we can make look proven." Harold's voice was calm. Matter of fact. "I've handled dozens of cases like this. Rich person, estranged family, public sympathy goes to the family every time. We'll settle for millions, take our cut, everyone wins. Everyone except her. She'll be fine. She's talented. She'll write more books. But your fiancé's family needs this money now. And you want to start your marriage without his mother constantly asking you for loans, don't you?" A long pause. Then Kara, quieter. "I guess you're right. I know I'm right. This is what I do." The audio ended. I stood in the hospital bathroom, hands shaking, staring at my phone. Evidence. Real evidence. Proof of conspiracy. Proof of fabricated documents. Proof of breaking and entering. I had them. I walked back to the hospital room, my legs feeling steadier than they had in months. Patricia looked up expectantly. Harold had his pen ready. Derek was already smiling. I picked up the settlement papers, held them for a moment, then set them back down unsigned. "No," I said. "Excuse me?" Patricia's smile faltered. "I'm not signing. I'm never signing. You fabricated evidence. You broke into my bookstore. You've been lying from the beginning, and I can prove all of it." I looked at Harold. "You should call your malpractice insurance carrier. You're going to need them." I turned and walked out, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I called Jack Porter from the hospital parking lot, my hands still shaking but from adrenaline now instead of despair. He listened to everything: Taylor's video files, the audio recording, the timeline of fabrication and conspiracy. "This changes everything," he said, and I could hear the energy returning to his voice. "Rose, this is exactly what we needed. We file emergency motions immediately. Today. Right now." Within 3 hours, Jack had drafted and filed multiple motions with the court. Motion to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice. Motion for sanctions against Harold Brennan for knowingly presenting fabricated evidence. Motion to release the asset freeze. Motion for restraining orders against Patricia and Derek. And the big one. A countersuit for fraud, conspiracy, perjury, and about 8 other charges I barely understood, but that sounded appropriately devastating. He submitted the security camera footage showing Derek and Patricia breaking into chapter and verse. He submitted the audio recording of Harold and Kara discussing the fabricated case. He submitted affidavits from Taylor and from the former employee who'd provided the audio. A young woman named Madison who'd worked at my bookstore and felt horrible about what was happening. Taylor explained it to me that evening over coffee at her shop. After hours, just the two of us. I always kept the security system running at chapter and verse even after it closed. You know how expensive that equipment was. I wasn't going to let it go to waste. Everything saved to cloud storage automatically. She wrapped her hands around her mug. When this whole thing started, when your family began making all these claims about helping you write, about having proof, something felt wrong. So I went through the footage. All of it. Months and months worth. And you found them breaking in. Found both of them. On different nights. Your mother spent 45 minutes in that office, Rose, practicing your handwriting. It's all on video. And the audio? Taylor looked uncomfortable. Madison felt terrible about what was happening to you. She knew Kara through a friend, ran into her at a party a few weeks ago. Kara had been drinking, started talking about the lawsuit. Madison recorded the conversation on her phone without telling her. Is that legal? In this state? Single-party consent. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. Madison was in the conversation, so she could record it. Taylor squeezed my hand. People who know you, who actually know you, Rose. They know this is wrong. Madison was horrified. She brought the recording straight to me. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing for 3 days later. I sat in the courtroom, Jack beside me, and watched Harold Brennan try to maintain his composure. As the evidence was presented, the security footage played on screens for everyone to see. Derek, late at night, rifling through my office. Patricia, practicing handwriting. The timestamps were clear. The video quality good enough to be undeniable. The audio recording of Harold and Kara played next. The courtroom was silent except for their voices, discussing the fabrication, discussing the money, discussing me like I was a mark in a con game. Harold stood to object. Your Honor, the admissibility of this evidence is something we'll discuss, the judge said coldly. After you explained to me why you presented documents to this court that you appear to have known were fabricated, I had no knowledge. The audio recording suggests otherwise, Counselor. The judge was a woman in her early 60s, named Teresa Rodriguez. She'd seemed skeptical of my case from the beginning, had ruled against me in the preliminary hearing, but now her face was hard as stone as she looked at Harold, then at Patricia and Derek sitting in the gallery. This court does not take kindly to fabricated evidence, Judge Rodriguez said, and it takes even less kindly to attorneys who knowingly present such evidence. Jack stood. Your Honor, we're requesting immediate dismissal of the plaintiff's case with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled. We're also requesting sanctions against the plaintiffs and their attorney. And we're filing criminal referrals for fraud, perjury, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. Motion granted on all counts, Judge Rodriguez said, without hesitation. This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The asset freeze is immediately lifted. Patricia Thornton and Derek Thornton are ordered to pay all legal fees incurred by the defendant, Rose Thornton. She looked at Harold. Mr. Brennan, you are ordered to show cause why you should not be held in contempt of court. A hearing on sanctions will be scheduled within 30 days. I'm also referring this matter to the State Bar Association for investigation. Harold's face went white. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm referring Patricia Thornton and Derek Thornton for criminal prosecution for fraud and perjury. Bailiff, please take them into custody. I watched, stunned, as 2 bailiffs moved toward my mother and brother. Patricia started crying. Real tears this time, tears of panic. Derek stood up, backing away. Your Honor, please, Derek said. We didn't mean. You committed fraud in my courtroom, Judge Rodriguez said. You wasted this court's time. You abused the legal system. And you attempted to destroy someone's career and reputation through deliberate lies. You will face the consequences. They were handcuffed. Actually handcuffed. My mother was sobbing. My brother was pale and shaking. They were led out of the courtroom while spectators, reporters, and onlookers watched in shocked silence. Kara, sitting in the back, got up and tried to leave quietly. The judge's voice stopped her. Miss Brennan, not so fast. I'd like to speak with you as well regarding your recorded statements. Kara froze, turned back. Her face was tear-stained, terrified. Over the next week, the full story came out in depositions and interviews. Kara broke first, testifying against Derek and her own father in exchange for a plea deal. She admitted the entire lawsuit had been fabricated, that Harold had convinced Derek and Patricia they could easily win millions from me, that he'd coached them on what to say, helped them create fake evidence, orchestrated the entire scheme. Harold Brennan was disbarred within a month. The State Bar Association moved quickly once the full scope of his misconduct became clear. This wasn't his first questionable case, just his first time getting caught with such clear evidence. Patricia and Derek took plea deals to avoid trial. Both pleaded guilty to fraud and perjury. They received probation, community service, heavy fines, and were ordered to pay full restitution for all damages they'd caused me. They were also prohibited from ever contacting me again or profiting from my story in any way. Patricia's book deal was canceled the same day. Derek's podcast was removed from all platforms. Kara's engagement ended immediately. Derek tried to salvage it, but she wanted nothing to do with him once the legal consequences started piling up. She issued a public apology to me, though I never responded. My publisher called within hours of the dismissal. Rose, we're reinstating your contract, Full support. Whatever you need. Grace, my editor, was in tears when we spoke. I'm so sorry we doubted you. The legal department was scared, but we should have supported you better. The truth spread quickly. Entertainment news, book blogs, social media. Everyone who'd followed the case now followed the resolution. Public opinion flipped overnight. Family from hell. Can't believe they did that to her. She deserves so much better. Interview requests flooded in, but this time from people who wanted to hear my side. I chose carefully, did one major interview with a journalist known for thorough, fair reporting. I told my story. The real story. Not the victim narrative, not a revenge tale, just the truth. A woman who'd worked hard, built a career, tried to maintain boundaries with a toxic family, and nearly lost everything when they decided to destroy her rather than let her succeed independently. The interview went viral. My book sales, which had plummeted during the lawsuit, recovered and then soared beyond their previous peaks. Readers felt invested now, felt protective. They knew what I'd survived. I reopened chapter and verse 6 months later, with Taylor as my official business partner this time. The grand reopening was packed. Readers came from 3 states away. We sold out of my books in the first hour. My IRS audit was resolved. My accounts unfrozen. The money was still there, every penny, because I'd never made those alleged offshore transfers. The documents had been completely fabricated. I wrote my 5th book about the entire experience. Not fiction this time, but a memoir. Taylor helped me work through it. Helped me find the words for feelings I'd barely let myself acknowledge while I was living through them. The memoir became my biggest bestseller. It resonated with people who dealt with family toxicity, with betrayal from people who were supposed to love them, with the struggle of setting boundaries and protecting yourself. I was invited back on that morning show where my mother had played victim. Different host this time, more professional. They apologized for the previous segment, for not questioning the narrative more carefully. I talked about what I'd learned. About how staying silent about abuse only gives abusers more power. About how real family isn't defined by blood, but by who stands beside you in the darkness. About how truth, even when buried deep, eventually finds its way to the surface. I started a foundation called the Sterling Initiative, using my pen name. It provided legal support and financial assistance to artists dealing with family exploitation. I'd lived through it. I knew how isolating it was. How expensive, how devastating. If I could help even one person avoid what I'd gone through, it would be worth it. My 4th book, the one that had been delayed by all of this, was finally published a year after the lawsuit ended. It was dedicated to Taylor and to everyone who'd stood by me. It debuted at number 1. I never heard from Patricia or Derek again. The restraining order and no contact provision ensured that. I heard through extended family that Patricia moved to another state, lived quietly, worked a retail job. Derek stayed local but kept a low profile. Their attempt to profit from my success had backfired spectacularly, leaving them worse off than when they'd started. I didn't feel victorious about their downfall. I just felt free. 2 years after that horrible engagement dinner, I stood in chapter and verse during a book signing for my 6th novel. The line wrapped around the block. Readers clutching copies, excited to meet me, to have their books signed, to tell me how much my story had meant to them. Taylor worked the register, managing the crowd with easy competence, occasionally catching my eye and grinning. We'd done this, together, built something real and lasting from the ashes of what my family had tried to burn down. A woman in her 30s approached the signing table, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said as I signed her book. My sister tried to do something similar to me. She claimed I'd stolen her business idea, sued me, dragged me through court for a year. Reading your memoir helped me survive it, helped me know I wasn't crazy, that what was happening to me was real and wrong. Did you win? I asked. I did. Finally. Just last month. She wiped her eyes. And reading about how you rebuilt afterward, that gave me hope that I could too. That happened a lot now. People sharing their stories, finding solidarity in knowing they weren't alone. It was the unexpected gift from everything I'd survived, the ability to help others navigate similar darkness. A younger woman, maybe early 20s, approached nervously. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever think about forgiving them? Your mom and brother? It was a question I got often. People seemed invested in the idea of reconciliation, of happy endings that involved restored family bonds. I forgave myself, I told her. I forgave myself for ever thinking I owed them access to my life, my work, my success. I forgave myself for the years I spent trying to earn love that was never really available. That's the only forgiveness that mattered. She nodded slowly, like something had clicked into place. The signing lasted 4 hours. By the end, my hand was cramping from writing so many inscriptions, but I was smiling. Real smiling, the kind that came from genuine happiness, rather than obligation or performance. Taylor locked the door after the last customer left, flipped the sign to closed, and collapsed dramatically into a chair. I think we sold 200 books today. 217, I said, checking the register report. And we took orders for another 93 that we'll have to special order. Not bad for a woman who supposedly couldn't make it on her own. Taylor raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. I laughed. It felt good to laugh about it now, to have enough distance that the absurdity was clear. My mother had tried to convince everyone I was a failure while I was sitting there as a successful published author. The irony was almost funny now that it couldn't hurt me anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Grace, my editor. Just got word. Your memoir has been optioned for film. They want to tell your story. I showed Taylor, who whooped with excitement. A movie? Rose, that's incredible. I'll believe it when I see it, I said. But I was smiling. Hollywood options fell through all the time. But even the possibility felt validating somehow. Proof that my story mattered beyond just me. We cleaned up the bookstore together, restocking shelves, straightening displays. This place that had been my refuge, then my battleground, then nearly my loss, was thriving again. Better than before. Because now I had a partner who genuinely cared, who'd proven her loyalty when everything fell apart. You know what the best part is? Taylor said as we finished up. You get to keep writing. You get to keep telling stories. They tried to take that away from you, and they failed. She was right. My 7th book was already in progress. Another literary thriller. Back to fiction after the memoir. It felt good to return to made-up stories, to characters I could control, to plots I could resolve. Real life was messy and complicated. Fiction gave me the power to create the endings I wanted. We walked out together, locking up, standing on the sidewalk in the cool evening air. The neighborhood was quiet, streetlights just coming on. That magical time between day and night when everything felt possible. What would you tell yourself? Taylor asked suddenly. If you could go back to that engagement dinner, knowing everything that was about to happen, what would you tell Rose from 2 years ago? I thought about it. About that woman sitting at the end of the table, listening to her mother belittle her, feeling small and ashamed and trapped. About how she had no idea that her secret was about to be exposed, that her family would weaponize it, that she'd lose nearly everything before finding her way back. I'd tell her that it gets worse before it gets better, I said slowly. But it does get better. I'd tell her that some people will try to take credit for your success because they can't stand that you achieved something they didn't. I'd tell her that toxic people don't change. They just escalate. And I'd tell her that the people who truly matter will show up when everything falls apart. Would she believe you? Probably not. I'm not sure I would have believed it either. Sometimes you have to live through the fire to understand you can survive it. Taylor nodded. Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you survived it. The world needs your stories, and I need my business partner. We hugged, and she headed to her car. I stood there a moment longer, looking at my bookstore, my name on the window, chapter and verse in elegant script. This thing I'd built, lost and rebuilt. I thought about my mother, wherever she was now. I wondered if she understood what she'd lost in her attempt to steal what I'd earned. Not just money or recognition, but her daughter. Whatever chance we'd had for a real relationship, she'd destroyed it herself. That was her burden to carry, not mine. I thought about Derek, who'd chosen greed and lies over supporting his sister, who'd collaborated in trying to destroy me because he thought he was entitled to my success. I hoped he'd learned something, but I doubted it. Some people never do. And I thought about where I was now. Successful, yes. Published, yes. But more importantly, free. Free from the expectation that family automatically deserved access to every part of my life. Free from guilt about protecting myself. Free from the belief that I owed anyone anything for simply existing and working hard. I got in my car and drove to my apartment, the one I'd been able to afford again once my assets were unfrozen. It was small but mine, filled with books and comfortable furniture and a desk where I wrote every morning. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote. Not the novel I was working on, but a blog post for my website. I wrote about boundaries, about recognizing toxicity, about the difference between being selfish and practicing self-preservation. I wrote, sometimes the people who claim they want you to succeed are really just waiting for you to fail so they can feel better about themselves. And sometimes the people who seem like family are really just strangers who happen to share your blood. Real family shows up. Real family celebrates your wins without expecting a cut. Real family loves you without conditions or contracts. I published it, then closed the laptop and went to bed. Tomorrow I'd wake up and write more of my novel. I'd have coffee with Taylor and plan next month's inventory. I'd respond to interview requests and reader emails. I'd live my life, the one I'd fought so hard to keep, and I'd keep telling stories. Because that's what I did. That's who I was. Not because my mother inspired me, or my brother believed in me, but because I had something to say, and the courage to say it. I'd survived the worst my family could do to me, and I was still standing. That was its own kind of victory. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't respect your success or your choices? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in difficult situations. Share this with anyone who might need to hear it, anyone who's struggling with toxic family dynamics, or fighting to protect what they've built. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for caring, for understanding that sometimes the hardest battles we fight are with the people who are supposed to love us most. Remember this: you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your success is yours. Your achievements are yours. And you have every right to protect them from people who want to take rather than celebrate. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and keep writing your own story, whatever that story may be. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.